Morning. Okay. So, welcome everyone, and we're about to start the session, and um, I'm very glad to have Ambi Parameswaran. Ambi, as he's called in the advertising world, years of experience, and how I came to know of Ambi was through Sudhakar Ram. The common link, I think, so the connection was Sudhakar Ram. Sudhakar Ram was the co-founder of Mastech, and also my boss for the longest time, almost 20 years plus, we were together. So I worked with him, and I also was a co-founder with Sudhakar in one of the startups, and we had invited Ambi to, yes, on his brand wisdom for our startup, which we were working on. Ambi has advertising veteran. From IM to advertising, and from there, 10 books. And this is your book, which I'm holding, which is what we're going to speak about. It just came a few days back, and I have read through it. And this is a very hot topic today, for people in the corporate world. So Ambi, the community out here is all people from the corporate world who are out here attending this session. And many of them are trying to venture out on their own. They have got their dreams. That's why it's called I create this community called a Million Dreams Community. The idea was that people who have been sitting on the other side, who are either startups or founders or wanting to, get up into creating something. The brand, as we know, plays a very big role in the process, and personal brand becomes very critical and we see some of the best leaders. They use this very efficiently. And the very fact that when I see this book of you, and as you have mentioned in the book also, you've written about it with a few friends, all this is a part of the brand journey, Ambi. So if you look at it. So the first question that I have, and this is as a marketing person, I've been in marketing for 35 plus years. On the other side, sitting on the corporate world most of the time. I also worked on the agency side for about 5 years, I think so. I was with Adfactors, and I set up the first pan-India integrated marketing communications company, Adfactors, with physical presence in over 120 markets. Integrated company which had all elements of coming, and we worked with some of the big brands at that point of time. So I come from the era from where, where you started, Ambi, is those era of sitting on the corporate side, big budgets on my side, and I had mass media, as we used to call it. The brand used to work in the space of mass media. And since this thing has come in, the game has completely changed. The advertising world itself got rocked by this new thing. So the first question, even before we get into personal branding, how have you seen the evolution of the brand journey all these years that you were there from the creative, the advertising side to what you see today as the digital explosion has happened in the world, and what we see as performance marketing becoming a bigger play than the brand piece in many companies?
Yeah. So first, Sanjay, thank you for inviting me onto your forum. Like you very rightly said, we got to know each other thanks to Sudhakar, and I'm sure all of us remember him very, very fondly. I know Sudhakar probably from school, because he is from my school and he's a couple of years my junior from school. Then he came to IM Cal, and then I again met Sudhakar when he joined Rediffusion Advertising in, I think, 81 or 82. And then interestingly, we also stayed in the same area in Andheri for a couple of years, and we got to know him and Girija, and so very sad we lost him very, very suddenly. Very, it was terrible. You can't find a finer human being than him. Very soft spoken, and like you said very rightly, he roped me into giving some advice on your new startup. And I always wondered, whether I was of any value, but But Sudhakar thought I was some value. He roped me in, and we did some work together. So I remember that very fondly. So good to be on your forum, Sanjay. And so, like you, I started my career in 1979 in advertising, right? And those days, the media used to be a handful. We had television, which was probably in about 4 or 5 cities, largely Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta, Madras. There was cinema, which was all over the place. So cinema advertising was important. Then, of course, there was newspapers and magazines. Outdoor advertising used to be hand-painted hoarding. So you had to design them in such a way that the local painter sitting in Nasik or sitting in Nellore will not destroy your brand by painting something wrong. So it was very, very simple. So from there, I started my journey in advertising. And then like you, I did the flip. I went into marketing for 6 years and then went back into advertising. But the world kept changing, right? The world of advertising changed. From just a handful, television became a very powerful medium in 1983 or so. Thanks to the Asian Games, we started getting television across all over India. 174 transmitters were set up. And suddenly television became a pan-Indian medium. Sorry, I forget. There was radio always, right? There was Vivid Bharati and there was commercial radio broadcasting was always there. But radio was seen as a reminder medium. Large amount of money used to go into print and then some money into into cinema. And then later, television started gobbling up a lot of money. So we grew up in an age when television, we had to adapt our knowledge to make ads for television. We used to make ads for cinema. Cinema was big screen, a lot of drama, and for television, it became more intimate. You had to look at more close-ups. You had to tell stories through emotions. So we learned a new skill when cinema gave way to television. And of course, in the last 10 years, television has given way given way to the computer, and now the computer has given way to the mobile phone. So today you're making ads, but you're kind of optimizing it for the mobile phone. How will it look in a 3-inch or a 4-inch or a 5-inch screen? Versus if you remember where we started at a 20-foot by 20-foot, kind of thing. The problem today, and I see that, when I talk to, my own brands, when I consult with them, is that the problem which they also tell me is that people who are good at performance marketing don't understand brand marketing. And people who understand brand marketing don't know what is performance marketing. So the client is somewhere sitting in the crossroad, trying to blow the whistle, saying, look, yeah, this will get me clicks, but what will it do to my brand? Will it destroy my brand? At the same time, someone says, this is a great brand campaign. Will it have any response at all? Will people click and come to my website or go and order my product from Amazon or wherever, right? So it's a tough situation out there. There are so many multiple options in terms of what you need to do. It makes marketing and advertising a lot more difficult and a lot more challenging. And I think at one time, everyone said print is going to die and television is going to die. Now, globally, brands are saying that, maybe we are dismissing print and television too early, that there is a role for television to play. Because a big problem in social media and digital is the credibility. You don't know what to believe. And there's a client of mine who had spent 20 crores on Facebook advertising, largely performance, right? And they went and did a survey about their brand awareness. It was very low. For 20 crores, they should have got a unaided brand awareness of probably 20%. But they had an unaided brand awareness of 5%. And of course, brand image scores were low. But they're tracking it largely on what is my click-through rate, what is my cost per acquisition, et cetera, which was missing out on the important thing of what is a brand. Do people remember your brand? What do they remember it for? What is your brand image? Sanjay, the old classical, brand tracking stuff we used to do. Today it's all gone out of the window, and you're only tracking website visits, time spent on the website, or number of clicks, number of orders, without realizing sometimes you're confusing between causation and attribution, right? So we are not spending enough time on separating the two. Theoretically, you can put all your money in Google and say, all I need is only Google AdWords.
Yeah.
But life is not that simple, like all of us know. But that opens up new ways to manage various forms of communication, to understand what is performance marketing, what are the limits of performance marketing. Similarly, what is, brand marketing and what are the limits of brand marketing, and, find a balance between the two. We can go on and on, right? So, but it's a vast ocean, Sanjay.
Yeah. So what you said is exactly what I've experienced with my own clients that I work with. The money, almost 95% goes towards the performance today. And what happens is, the challenge that I see is when the market starts maturing. Like one of the clients I've shared with you, that client earlier, I don't want to name that in this forum, but one of the clients is working with. When the markets start maturing and many players start coming into the market, and then it's a brand game. And that's the time when the realization comes that it's not just performance. I need to have a brand. And brand is not about pulling person immediately. It could be the person will be coming sometime in the future, but at least my presence is there and I've built a position out there in his mind for coming back. But when markets mature, clients realize that that's the time when the performance just doesn't hold, because there are 20 players now suddenly in the market. So when you're starting off creating a category, your performance works. And that's why a lot of startups, when they're creating a category, they're getting onto new stuff, it's a lot of performance. But as the maturity happens in the market space, the brand again starts playing an important role. That's what I have experienced.
Yeah, and I think to build on what you said, a lot of these direct-to-consumer brands are realizing that you can achieve a particular level of penetration by going only on Amazon and Flipkart.
Yeah.
But beyond that, you can't go.
Yeah.
You're not able to grow. Therefore, you have to get into general trade.
Yeah.
And you want to get into modern trade. And
Yeah.
that is very messy and very difficult. But if you don't go there,
Yeah.
you're not going to hit a 500 crore turnover. There are limits, because these kind of feed into each other, Sanjay. I mean, the fact that you may see a particular brand of shampoo on the website, the next time you visit a chemist, you see it there. The third time, you may get a prompt on your computer and you may order it, right? But without seeing it in the chemist outlet, you might not have had that, brand image of this brand. So there is a bit of, I think somewhere consumers tend to feel, if it is available in a physical store, it is a brand I can trust that much more, right?
Yeah.
Compared to a brand which is only telling me on Facebook and Insta, buy me, buy me, buy me. And I suddenly see that brand in a department store, or in a chemist outlet, or in a, in Chroma, or in Reliance Digital. Your credibility level of the same brand goes up. We still don't have the tools and techniques to measure some of these things. Like in the good old days, we used to struggle to measure the intermedia effect. What happens if you have television? What happens if you add print to television? And what happens if you add radio to that? How do these interact with each other? Difficult to measure. I think today the same problem exists. What happens when I sell on Amazon? Plus, what happens when I also sell on the same product on, let's say, modern trade, like DMart and Reliance? And what happens if I also sell it across, let's say, 20,000 premium general merchant outlets? How does it affect, how do these things affect each other?
Yeah.
We still don't know how to separate the two, separate these factors. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
So even
it's going back.
pure direct-to-consumer brands are today distributing the product to retail outlets. Why should they?
So for me, I'm seeing it, Ambi, that it's almost going back to the times when what we used to call integrated. So that concept of integrated stands even today. I'm seeing that for my clients. When they go digital, I tell them it's not just digital; it has to be, also physical. So there's a term which we have, is phygital. You have the digital presence, but you also present physically in the marketplace. Now, coming back from that's the interesting talk on the brands that you have shared and the evolution of this space. The concept of personal brands as the social media started becoming more and more prevalent, and that's also there in your book, one of the chapters, and I clearly see you actually follow some of that practice. For example, the way you have structured your screen, you've actually put it down in your book that how you structure. See, there's a lot to learn for me on that aspect. How you've structured your screen, how you've positioned your book behind, and how you're dressed for this. This is part of that piece of what you're saying in the digital world. How do you present yourself? So this personal brand. First of all, demystify this idea called brand to a personal brand. So what is the position of this?
Yeah, so let me start, by telling the your friends here that how did I get to do this book at all? I mean, I'm not by any stretch of imagination, I'm not a big time influencer. I'm not a big personal brand. But when the lockdown started in April, 2 years ago, 2020. I was requested by IIT Madras Alumni Association to deliver some talks on branding, online talks, right? And so I did one, and I said, look, you should get more people to do it. But they said, no, why don't you do 3? So I did one on branding, basics. I did one on living the brand, which is B2B branding. And I did one on personal branding. And I put together a presentation on personal branding. I read up some stuff and put it up. And then that got kind of led me to a lot of people inviting me to do this talk to their teams and their associates, etc. I said there was some traction there, so therefore I got deeper into it, read a lot of stuff on that, and then I was also quite amused that all of us think personal branding has come up only now because of Insta and Facebook and all that, but the reality is that personal branding is actually quite old. The first article on personal branding was written in 1997, 25 years ago, by Tom Peters. And he wrote a cover story in the magazine Fast Company. And Sanjay, Fast Company is a highly respected magazine in the tech world. So the cover story was saying that brand you. And he said, and Tom Peters is highly respected in the management circle. He's the former consultant at McKinsey. He and Robert Waterman wrote a book called In Search of Excellence, which anyone over the age of 50 here would have read. So it was a very seminal article 25 years ago. And he said, look, whichever position you are in a company, remember you are a brand and you have to take the effort to brand yourself. So all of us tend to think that this, personal branding is something which came up only during social media and digital thing. It actually is much older than that. And then there are many articles around this research work done around personal branding, which predates digital media, which is why, the last chapter in my book, I've dedicated it to Mahatma Gandhi, who I believe was the most powerful personal brand to come out of India in recent times, right? So personal branding is something which is not all that new. It's 25 years old. It's been there. But today with digital medium available to you, the way for you to do personal branding has become a lot more simpler and a lot more complicated, right? I would say it's a combination of two.
Yeah, so just expand on that, simpler and complicated.
Okay, so, it's become simpler because anyone today can post a message on LinkedIn or on Twitter or on Insta and hope to become instantly famous, right? So that way it's become simpler. But the problem is a lot of people are doing it, right? In the good old days, if you go back, let's say 30 years or 40 years, how did a senior executive build his personal brand? You went and gave talks at physical forums, and sometimes you got invited to write a column in say an Economic Times or Business Standard, and you wrote that, right? And then you slowly built your brand that way, right? Today you can do that, but you can also every week post a message on LinkedIn about what your thoughts for the week, right? And then hope and pray that, it goes viral and you become a strong brand. But the truth, it doesn't happen that way, because a lot of people out there are posting messages every week. And a lot of people are sharing a lot of garbage on LinkedIn every week. So that's not going to go. So you got to think through. So I keep saying that, look, if you're wanting to build your personal brand, you have to start with where you are, right? What are you? Define yourself, and then make efforts to amplify that. Personal branding doesn't mean you start posting messages on Instagram and LinkedIn tomorrow. That's absolutely the wrong way to start. The personal branding steps, I would say, is first figure out what you want to do, what do you want to stand for, right? And what are you good at? And yesterday I was at a Lit Fest where very nice, someone stood up and asked this question saying, I'm a nobody. How do I do my personal branding? So three of us were on stage. And so I said, look, nobody is a nobody. Everybody is a somebody. There is something in you which is unique. And Ashwin Sanghi was on stage, said, look, the way to start is three things. One, figure out what you like to do, right? So do things that you like to do. Second, also figure out whether you're good at doing it, right? And third, figure out whether you'll be paid for doing it. If all these three kind of come together, then, you can go ahead and build your personal brand. Otherwise, you need to think twice. And my own advice was, what you may think you're very humorous, you may think you're very articulate, you may think you can tell a great story. Do people around you think that way? So define your personal brand in maybe 3 or 4 or 5 words, and then talk to people around you, whether they agree with what you're saying. I might say, look, I might want to believe that I'm very sophisticated, I'm a great communicator, I'm very analytical, and I'm very creative. But people around me may say, no, you're hardly creative, you're hardly humorous, right? Then I need to rethink. So start with the basics, which is, what are you? What do you stand for? And then figure out how to amplify that.
Yeah. So that's interesting as what you're saying. And, in this book, Ambi, that the journey that you have taken of this character in the college, in the campus, was this, I mean, just trying to understand, was this a real characterization of people that were there in the campus, and you have just, created the book around it, or is this fiction and something?
Okay, so it's total fiction, yeah. I mean, Sanjay, I have written, this is my 11th book, right? So I've written books on branding. I've written books on advertising, Nawab Noodles, which some people here may have heard of, India through 50 years of advertising. I've written books on learning from clients, which is a book called Sponge. I've written a book on rejection called Spring. So this time when I started thinking about writing a book on personal branding, I said I should try and write it differently. And, like, for example, everyone here, you go for your silver reunion, and then you go for your pearl reunion. You go for your reunion every 5 years. And then, in our particular batch, we meet every year, and we go to a different, location every year. So I said, look, what if 5, 6 friends meet for their silver reunion, and they start discussing branding and personal branding? How will it be? Will everyone agree that branding is important? So I created a character called Shankar Shah, who is a successful entrepreneur. For example, someone like, Sudhakar Ram, 20 years ago, right? Very successful entrepreneur, done an IPO of his company. But, I'm not very sure what is branding. I mean, he's been successful doing a B2B business. He runs an automobile ancillary company. He sells to automobile companies. So he says, yeah, branding kya hai? I mean, I know my customers, they buy on quality. Yeah, branding kya hai? So he starts asking these fundamental questions, right? So I've created a character called Ambi, who's much younger than me, who is from the world of media and advertising. He starts explaining. And then I bring in 2 other characters. One is a HR head of a company. The third is someone from the financial services who comes in. And of course, there is a a fifth person who's from media, who's working in a newspaper and a television company. So these five people sit and they walk around the campus arguing about the relevance of branding and the relevance of personal branding. And they go back and forth saying this is positive, negative, why should I do it? So things like that, for example, personal branding is just bragging is one interpretation. I don't like personal branding because it means bragging, I've done this, I've done that, and so this Shankar chap says, I don't like it, yaar, it's both bragging. But the reality is personal branding done the right way is not bragging, is politely telling people what you've achieved. There's nothing wrong with that. The moment you start exaggerating it, I've launched the biggest thing in the world. I've done the biggest campaign in the world. I've done that. That is bragging. But say that, I played a role. I played a role in a brand called Amul. I played a role in the building of a brand called Santur. I played a role in the building of a brand called Sundrop. That's not bragging. That is building my personal brand. So it starts from there, right? So these guys argue about everything. They argue about relevance of branding. They argue about personal branding. And then, of course, the tricky thing, Sanjay, is that, look, if I'm working in a company, is it even kosher for me to build my personal brand? Should I not be only talking about my company? The truth is, if you build your personal brand, it will help your company in the long run, right? Because people want to work with people whom they know and respect. So you'll be able to attract better talent if you're a strong personal brand. But if you're working in a company, remember the company is paying your money, paying your salary, right? So therefore, you cannot say anything negative about your company, and you cannot say negative about any of your company's customers, clients, or even vendors. Okay, so which is why companies have this social media policy which you have to sign up. But beyond that, you want to share some, joke which is innocuous, or you want to share a particular incident where you solved a customer's problem, or some interaction you had with someone which left a marking impression on you. You want to share that on your personal profile. That's fine. That's a way of building your brand. Or you read something somewhere which was very interesting. You want to share it. Go ahead and share it. Or you saw a video which you thought was a very interesting ad. I mean, today someone shared an ad of Apple, which was very interesting. I commented, right? This is phenomenally interesting ad. I wish someone had done it before. But stuff like that. So sharing intelligent, interesting stuff is perfectly okay. What is not okay is commenting about the company in a public forum without getting the company's approval, right? Which I think is not right. So you have to find a balance. But I think just to come back is branding. These five friends discuss branding, and these five friends discuss personal branding, and some myths. They discuss several myths about personal branding, which we will talk about.
Ambi, what you said about Sudhakar, let me share with you an incident that I had when I just joined Mastech. I didn't really know in deep the culture of that place. So I came from Art Factors, from the world of glamour, because I was dealing with a lot of it was a PR company with a lot of kind of any brand you take, you create a lot of noise around it, and you go around that way. So one of the first events that I was given a task of organizing was the 20th year, I think, so celebration of the company. And I did it in style, I did it in all the classical way of a PR guy would, do it. I got the model. I did a ramp walk with models, and it was very beautiful in the sense we had some singer who came, and Ashank loved it beautifully, that event. He said, "Wow, what you have done! This is great," because we had the Kohlis of the world, and all those guys were there, and Sudhakar later called me, and he told me very nice, very nicely. He told me, Sanjay, this is not Mastech. He said, Mastech is very understated. And then I started getting that, all the four founders are understated. So the brand actually went down from somebody like Sudhakar. If you meet Sudhakar, as you said, he's a very soft-spoken guy. He's never about brash. He's not about, talking too many things. But what he'll talk is, and somebody told me this because we used to travel together a lot. He said, It is substance over style. That's what, if you have to understand mastic. And that was what Sudhakar was. Substance over style. So you could think all these guys, in fact, all the four founders are like that. Whether you meet Ashank or you meet Sundar, very simple, very, down to earth. That's when I understood that element of what mastic stood for and what the brand Sudhakar stood for. And Sudhakar, when he started speaking to the media, and that's where we started building that thing, the kind of depth he could throw up, because he understood and he was a visionary. So for almost 5 years, we ran a blog which he worked on, which was about the future. And he came out with a book later on, which he actually, the connected world. So he was always a visionary. So his brand, the personal brand, so any media guy would love to talk to him because of the depth that he offered on any kind of subject that he spoke about. So that's the personal brand. On the social media piece, let me share with you a thought which you just said, what you share. So I shared one of those campaigns which I did for Parle. Parle ji was one of my clients, and I did this Shaktiman campaign in Chennai. I took actually Mukesh Khanna, Shaktiman, to meet the kids. And it was like it kind of created chaos in Chennai, And the problem, what I was told was the market share of Parle ji in that South market in Tamil Nadu was very low. And they were competing with Britannia, who was actually leading that market share out there, and they wanted to crack through that market share. So they said, how do we crack it? And I was the guy from this side, and Praveen Kulkarni was the marketing head at Parle. And he gave me this assignment and went there, and we took Shaktiman there, and we did the advertising and everything else, and PR and, road shows in the schools. We had a turnout of more than, I remember in that day, we had planned for about 20,000 people to turn up. We had more than 1 lakh people turn up at the ground. This is the time of Noah. I shared this story on the LinkedIn. Within a day, I had about 7 lakh impressions in one day. I've never seen something like that. It was crazy viral in the sense, and it's crossed the 10 lakh plus, kind of impressions that it did for a post. So it was crazy viral that it went. So what you're saying is true. If I have done something, it's not bragging. It is something that I've experienced, and I'm sharing of value to somebody who can actually use it for whatever ways. So interesting. So myths.
No, just to come in, Sanjay, I think what you said is very right about Sudhakar. Sudhakar was an understated person, but Sudhakar was also a brand, right? Absolutely. He was conscious of building his brand in a particular way, which is why he used to write the blog. And I think his book is somewhere there, Connected World book he had
given. So we did that together. So I was,
it's a very serious read. It's not a very easy read.
Yeah. We actually traveled. Ambi, we traveled to places across the country. We together went to places like the Fab India. We saw their AGM. We had gone to the fields. I mean, we had met these guys in the villages. So he was very deep in terms of it was not just anything he did was absolutely very deep. You're right.
Yeah, so that is his brand. So if I were to, so he would have got very upset if you had arranged for a bloody, you had arranged for a, for a fashion show. Now, similarly, when we celebrated 50 years of Ulka, so we had to think of a show which was interesting. So in Bombay, and just by having a party is not good enough. Like what you say, you need to have something. So we could have got top models to come and top music directors to come and play some, Bollywood stuff. We said, no, we are not that kind of an agency. We are a somewhat serious, strategy-oriented agency. So we'll do something a little more sit down. So we actually had a Tawfiq Qureshi performing jazz, right? So we had we had planned for a 30-minute jazz concert by Tawfiq Qureshi, who's Gurtu, not Tawfiq Qureshi. We had Gurtu, Trilok Gurtu. Yeah, Trilok Gurtu was in town, luckily on that time. And Trilok Gurtu is like Shobha Gurtu's son, but he is a Grammy Award winner in jazz percussion. He's there. We were lucky we got him, and he performed for half an hour. And then, because of the applause, he continued for another 40 minutes. So my boss had said, yaar, ye sab kyun kar raha hai? I mean, before we started. He said, music nahi tha. We should have just had a little bit of talk, play an AV, and then we should have had dinner. I said, no, boss. we have to add some, like Sanjay, the same thing, we have to add some sizzle. Otherwise, it becomes too commercial. And you won't believe it, the feedback at the end of that, people remembered Trilok Gurutu's music and they said, wow, what a lovely put together event it was. It was not just sell, saying we are a great agency, we do great work. We had a wonderful AB, which had a nice theme line, which said, making brands famous, making clients rich. Which interestingly, someone reminded me of that line a few weeks ago. And he said, yeah, your AB was very interesting. It had something making brands famous and making clients rich. I had forgotten, but he remembered. But if you had just played the AV and gave a talk saying we are a great agency, okay. But then adding that tadka of Trilok Gurtu added something to that evening. So what you did was right. I mean, having something in addition to talks by Sudhakar and Ashank was needed.
By the way, Ashank called me and congratulated me on doing a fantastic event. Towards I had a session with Sudhakar who had an absolutely opposite take on.
Yeah, so that is interesting. So, I mean, Sudhakar had a way of building his brand. I'm sure he was understated. A bit like, there is a difference between the TCS leadership and Infosys leadership, right? All the TCS leaders, whether going from Mr. Kohli to Ram, Mr. Ramadurai, they were all very understated. So I think somewhere both Sudhakar, Ashank, and Sundar are all in that TCS mold rather than the Infosys mold.
So Ashank maybe is a more outgoing personality, and he would be on all forums, NASCOMs, and everywhere. Sudhakar was a bit different from the rest of the place. So interesting what you said, Speg. So myths versus realities. Now, myths and realities. If I have to ask you to break these two down, what are those myths and what are those the reality? I mean, how do you explain this?
So, there are, like in the book, I think one of the chapter, I think the last but one chapter, I've started putting down what are the myths about personal branding. And I tried to dispel all of them. One was, of course, the myth is that, personal branding has been created by social media. That's not true. Personal branding is about 25 years old as a concept today, right? And there are many articles written on personal branding in journals like Harvard Business Review, etc. So it's a fairly old and established concept, personal branding. And you can build a personal brand even without social media. Is the first thing. The second myth is that personal branding is only for CEOs and big film stars, right? That's wrong. I mean, everyone is a personal brand, and it's up to you to build that personal brand. So the third myth is, I'm working very hard, I'm doing a good job, mera brand to ban jayega, automatically. Ban sakta hai, ban bhi jayega, but it will help if you take some effort to build your personal brand. Personal brand cannot be a replacement for managerial effectiveness or leadership. You got to be a good manager. You got to be a good leader. You got to deliver the goods. Then you can make efforts to build your personal brand. The other thing is that, personal brand is all bragging, and you discuss that. It's not bragging. It is like what you did. And you went and told people that you did that with Shaktiman and it helped Parle-G's market share in Tamil Nadu. I know Tamil Nadu is totally dominated by Britannia milk bikkies. So even if Parle-G managed to go from 3% to 4%, that's a big jump, right? And that's not bragging. That is sharing a piece of information.
What Praveen shared with me, actually, Ambi was from, 50 tons, they went to 2,000 tons of sales per month.
Wow.
It was the shift that happened in that market for them after that. And we did an integrated, as I told you, we were all about integrated. So actually he wrote it in the post, that this is what happened to Parle-G biscuits.
So 50 tons to 2,000 tons is a big jump, yeah. The next myth is, in the book I've written about this guy, saying that networking is meant for losers. Networking is seen as something you go and give visiting cards and collect people's visiting card and keep sending them mail. Networking, that is the lowest form of networking. You can do it. It may work for you. But in the book, I've explained there is a better form of networking, which is to join a forum where you'll meet interesting people who are not totally like you. So everyone here knows that Microsoft got its big break by supplying software to IBM PC. But people don't know, how did a young Harvard dropout like Bill Gates actually got to meet the IBM people? He's sitting in Boston, IBM is in New York. How did he get to meet them? The story is that Bill Gates's mother was on the advisory council of a NGO called United Way. And she was involved in that. So she used to attend all the meetings, contribute to the discussions. And in one of the meetings, someone sitting next to her who's been on the committee for many years, like her, Jim Ackers. So Jim Ackers asked, Mary Gates, saying, look, Mary, what is your son doing? You said he's in college. What is he doing? So she said, oh, he has dropped out of college and he's at home and he's sitting in the garage. And when I ask him, what is he doing? He says, he's doing some software. I don't know what it is. So Jim says, look, that's interesting. We are looking for people to partner with us. We're talking of, long time back, right? 80s, early 80s, right? We are looking for someone to help us. Why don't you ask him to come and meet us? So then Bill Gates goes and meets the IBM team, which is working on IBM PC, and they give him the contract to develop the first, what is called DOS, disk operating system, which ran the IBM PC. That's a big break he got, right? That break happened because his mother was a good networker, and she had built a network which was very diverse, not just people from Boston. She knew people from New York. She knew people working in IBM. So the other myth which all of us should be aware of is that we should not dismiss that networking is for losers. You build the right network, it will help you. That is the next myth talking about. Then the other myth is that personal branding both complex. I don't know how to do it. And I say, look, there are probably 4 or 5 simple steps. First is define what you are. What do you stand for? Second step, get it validated. Get it validated people around you. And third is then amplify it. Then you start doing things which reflect this personal brand of yours. And the fourth is measure how you're performing. And maybe then make course correction. You can make corrections on how you look. You can make corrections on how you write, how you post, all that. So in the book, I've talked about 2 other important areas, which I call executive presence and executive voice. Both are important. You need to understand both, including like what you said, in one of the, in the early days of Zoom, we used to have Zoom meetings where people used to have the camera under their nose. So when the camera is under your nose, you see nose hair, right? You see a very enlarged nose, right? Simple stuff. So in the early days when we were getting ready to do Zoom meeting and we attended a lot of these Harvard, business school sessions. So it's, look, you got to face the light, right? Other thing is, this guy is sitting and doing a meeting and he's got a light behind him. So he looks like a ghost. Simple stuff. That is, of course, digital presence. In physical presence, again, it matters. How do you dress? How do you talk? How do you go about, can you walk into a room full of strangers and start a conversation with someone, right? That's a critical skill of executive communications. Can you walk into a room where you don't know anyone? You don't know anyone, but you got to go and say hello, introduce yourself, and start a conversation. Can you do that? That's again part of your personal branding. And the 7th myth is that personal branding is it only meant for marketing people? The truth is personal branding is meant for everyone. In fact, one of the early sessions I did on personal branding was for investment advisors who are representing an insurance company, right? And they said, look, we want our investment advisors to build their brand, understand they are a brand. And so I did a session like this for about 200 of them, saying, look, this is the importance of personal branding. So these are like broadly 7 myths. I think the book will open up a lot of things. In fact, the book is very much like, asking questions. Does it matter to me? I'm a successful businessman. Why should I do branding? Why should I do personal branding? So I will not take away too much from the book, so that I think some of you may enjoy reading the book. And this is the book. Thank you, Sanjay. And And interestingly, in the last chapter, like I said, I've dedicated it to father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi, on how he went and built his personal brand, even before personal brand of the word was known. From saying that, look, how should I dress myself? Should I wear a suit? No. He, in fact, in his autobiography, he's written that he chose, and let me read that little bit. Pretty interesting. Uh, Pretty interesting that he said that during Satyagraha in South Africa, I had altered my style of dress so that to make it more keeping with that of the international laborers. And in England too, I had adhered to the same style for indoor use. For landing in Mumbai, I had a Kathiawadi suit of clothes consisting of a shirt, dhoti, and a cloak and a white scarf, all made from Indian milk cloth. But as I was to travel third class from Bombay, I regarded the scarf and the cloak as too much of an encumbrance. So I shed them and invested in an 8 to 10 annas in a Kashmiri cap. And he says, one dressed in that fashion was sure to pass muster as a poor man. Obviously, Mr. Mahatma Gandhi was trying to identify himself with the poor man, and he dressed that way. Same thing, right? When you go to a client's office, if everyone in the client office wears a suit, you should go dressed in a suit. Whereas everyone dressed in t-shirt and jeans, then you can't go in a suit. You look pretty weird. So either you go in t-shirt and jeans, and maybe you'll wear a jacket like this to stay a little bit more formal. So right from there, Mahatma Gandhi planned the way he dressed, the way he wrote, the way he talked, the music he used, the newspaper he published. All that built his brand. You're on mute, Sanjay.
Yeah, so absolutely true. Ambi, I'll just take off from where you left. And all the leaders that I have worked I've seen one common thread is the authenticity in what they do. It's not that you find that they're dressing and it's what is called as walk the talk. They're actually living that brand. They're not putting it on. They're not showing it for the world. It is actually, that's the way they behave like that. And if you see, and one of the biggest examples for me is that working in Mastech, I saw this very closely with all the 4 founders. So when I see brand Mastech, and I see Ashank, and I saw Ketan, and I saw Sundar, and I saw Sudhakar, it was a common, and Ashank in one of her interviews with me has mentioned this, that, if you went to and spoke to me as an employee, or you went and spoke to Sudhakar and asked the same question, perhaps you would have got the same answer. That was the common thread. That was a common thread of values that ran in the organization. So there was a chemistry that made us stick around for these 35 plus years together. And that's what built this organization. So that the thread of authenticity you cannot put on something today on social media. You cannot put on something which you are not, which is what I have seen. And so very classically, one person who uses the social media very effectively, the leadership, Mr. Anand Mahindra. If you see his Twitter profile and see the way he leverages it, he's not selling anything. He's actually trying to build very slowly a classical Indian brand of that kind, and he's building that kind of a connect with people. He takes up stories from the ground, from India, puts it back into, and he gets a huge number of people, liking and following. And he's indirectly, what he's creating is rubbing off on his brand. And the other thing that I have learned from some of these guys is that they use the social media to listen. So the personal brand is not just a one-way talk. So like Kunal Shah, he does it, is that he will put out a poll. He'll always put out and ask. Elon Musk very interestingly does it all the time. Today also he's running a poll on, what should happen. And people are responding to it. So these guys are also listening to the last customer who's there on the ground. The brand is not just a one-way communication. I see that personal brand is also listening to what the audience is saying and what they are asking, and they're going back on the product design based on the feedback that's coming from the ground. That's the advantage of the digital presence that we are seeing. So, Ambi, as a closing message from you before we get into a Q&A with all the people, what would be a message to the people in the corporate world, the middle? You have already said some of it, but I would say that a lot of people are reluctant to take steps to move. and especially organizations that I work with, it's only the CEO or the top guys who are doing whatever is needed. But the rest of the organization is just not there, out there, then they can contribute a lot to build the brand, that company. No, and in the process, they're actually building their own brand, is what I see it as. What is your message to people who are sitting out there and not moving to, looking at this? Like you said, I don't know whether I should be, is it like bragging? What is that one or two key things that you want to tell people in the corporate world, why they should be doing this? And what is it all about, and how it is going to really help them in their journey, in their professional journey?
Sanjay, I think important thing which we should remember is personal branding efforts which you do on social media or even otherwise cannot be done at the cost of your job, right? You got to perform. So, Professor Janikram Murthy and I were discussing this the other day, and he said, if you do a 2x2 matrix, someone who's very effective in management, someone who's not very effective, and someone who's very effective in personal branding, someone who's not very effective in personal branding. Now, if you're not very effective as a manager, but you're very good at personal branding, you're going to crash and burn faster, right? Whereas if you're very effective, but you're not very good at personal branding, then your career is going to progress very slowly. But if you're very effective as a manager, but you also do good quality personal branding, then your career will get a boost, right? So the gentle steps to take is to, first of all, simple thing I tell people is just go and update your LinkedIn profile, right? For example, read, Sanjay's LinkedIn profile and then update your LinkedIn profile, make it up to date. Simple thing you do, right? And maybe spend an hour every week, on LinkedIn, just to read, follow a few interesting people, read what they are posting. Simple stuff, not complicated. Then what you can do as a company is to let your employees share stuff with the company is doing. You can give them official stuff saying this is what you can share, right? Share that with a point of view saying, I worked on this, I'm very proud, we are launching this product, a great product, blah, 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 whatever it is. Start sharing that. Get comfortable, get comfortable. And I do executive coaching, right? I coach senior leaders. So there's someone in a senior position in HR. So and one of the things I told him is, look, you're in HR, you want to be a thought leader. Are you writing? He said, no, I have not written. I said, okay, write something. And about something. He said, about what? Tell me something which bothers you. He told me something which bothers him. I said, write a column on that, write 500 words on that and post it on LinkedIn. Oh, sir, I said, it's not controversial, no? Post it on LinkedIn. And I said, now I want you to write a LinkedIn post every 2 months. And then this you can increase to once a month. Don't worry if no one reads it, doesn't matter. No one reading it is no problem. You can't get 1 million impressions. No. Even if you get 5 impressions, be happy. Start sharing it, get comfortable. Start building your confidence, and then you build your personal brand. So take those gentle steps. You cannot become an influencer. Don't worry about becoming an influencer. That is not meant for every one of us, right? So learn how to do it slowly and steadily, and rewards will come. But remember, that doesn't replace your performance on the job. Your performance on the job is critical, right? If, for example, you find a colleague who is very active on LinkedIn and Twitter and Insta, but who misses his target every month, you will pull him up, or you'll pull her up saying, I'm sorry, look, I like your makeup tips, but you're not delivering your numbers. Please figure out what you want to do. I would pull her up. Though she may have 5,000 or 50,000 people following her on Insta Reels on how to put makeup. But, the job she's supposed to do is to deliver whatever, sales or whatever it is. If she doesn't do that, then, Insta Reels of no use, right? So find the right balance and start doing it in slow and steady steps. Simple things, Sanjay, is that first fix your social media profile. Fix it. And then if you think it's too much to do everything, pick one which you want to go. So you want to go on Insta, then share the same thing on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Many of us are focused on LinkedIn. So whatever we share on LinkedIn, we also share on Facebook, Twitter, and Insta. And you can go either way. It's too much, if you've got a full-time job, it's too much of a headache to create stuff for every single platform. Not worth the effort. Figure out which platform is important for you and share the other. And take the occasion, and I tell, and in the book, I've given an example of, if you're not very comfortable giving public speeches, the low-hanging fruit for you is to go and give a talk in a business school or in a college, where the students, look at you saying, he's got 20 years experience, 30 years experience, they'll listen to you and they'll clap. You'll feel confident, right? And you'll slowly develop courage to go and then deliver a talk at CII or World Economic Forum Davos or at Harvard Business School or wherever. That slowly the confidence will come. So these are my simple closing tips, Sanjay. And of course, you can read the book and figure out a lot more tips from the book. You're on silent, Sanjay.
So everyone open to questions. Anyone has got a question, please go ahead and ask. So who's got questions now? Anyone has any questions for Ambi? Okay, so I don't see any
Can
questions. Yeah,
just one question from my side.
please introduce yourself.
I am Shri Mohan, a CA working in a bank. On social media presence and branding, shall I remove my connect with my current employer and do it on my own as a finance professional? Otherwise, I think the company overtakes my branding and somehow it may get diluted.
Sanjay, do you want to answer or shall I give my view?
I can give you my view and maybe Ambi, you can add to it.
Yeah.
So if I have to look at the company brand and the personal brand, first of all, look at the policy of your organization. That's the first thing I would ask you to do, is to check what are the policies and the rules in terms of how they want the employees to present and be there. So even if you take out the company name, the fact that you're working for the company, it's there. But you can actually mention it also, that these are my personal views in some place. But as Ambi said, for an organization, if you're going to take on the company or you're going to take on the clients of the company, or you're taking a counterpath to what the organization stands for, I think so you are on a sticky wicket. If I was the head of CopCom of the communications department, and I've been a head of comms in many of the companies, I would be very careful. I would advise you to play by the rules for the organization. But yes, you can see yourself as a thought leader. If you're a thought leader, if you're contributing value to your community, no organization would want to lose something like that, because that indirectly rubs off on the organization. In some way, it contributes to. Because what happens is your links or your connects which are there in the industry will start, also seeing your organization profile. So it helps in a way. If you're writing about something the company is doing, and then from that speaking up further, it adds value. So my suggestion would be, first play by the rules. But on the other side, if you're adding thoughts or you're adding value to people who are coming in without conflicting with the organization's position and point of view, most companies will not have an issue. And that's how you can do it. By taking off yourself and saying, I'm disconnected, it doesn't really help, because you're still a part. Somebody can trace you back and you will be caught on a wrong foot.
I agree completely with what Sanjay said. So, Shri, you have to be clear that you're working full-time in that company. And if you're working in a banking institution, you're going to post something about banking, something about finance. It should not conflict with what your company is saying, right? So check out the social media policy and figure out what works, what doesn't work, what is right, what is wrong, and stick to that. Don't overstep the limits. However, certain areas, are free to you, right? For example, you went on a holiday, right? You want to write about a holiday you took, or something interesting that you did. You went on an adventure trip, or you play golf, or you play tennis. Writing about your personal passion, no company will object. But the moment you start saying, no, I want to write about equity investments will go down, blah, blah, blah. And if your company is saying no, equity investment will go up, and you're going to contradict that, in a somewhat public domain, it's going to get you into trouble. Also, remember, you cannot, unless you create a totally new profile with a totally new name, without mentioning your company's name, you will get discovered. And why create unnecessary trouble for yourself, right? So stick to the game the way it is played, and you'll do well. Like, for example, when I was working full-time as a CEO of a large advertising agency, whatever I wrote, I used to write about branding, I used to write about advertising, I used to write about media, but I never used to say anything negative about my company or my parent company, which I didn't have a very high opinion of, or any of my clients. I always used to maintain neutrality. Never curse your clients, never curse your company, never curse your parent company, right? I used to maintain that, but still I wrote a lot. I mean, I've written so many books, and many of these books were written when I was working full time in the company, right? Sanjay, you're on mute, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Suresh, can you just go with your question?
Yeah, thanks. My name is Suresh. I work for the TVS Group in the south of India. My question is, for a starter who's going to start on branding, example, should we take the company first and then start off something, or should we start off with personal branding? How do we initiate the process?
So, Ambi, I think I'll start with that. So my experience dealing in the digital side, working with a lot of clients who got the same issue, company or the leader, what do you take? So on LinkedIn, for example, you'll find that the digital world, somehow the personal profiles will start getting you better traction than the company pages, which is a thing which happens very interestingly on LinkedIn. If you see it, for all my clients, I've noticed it that, there's a company page that we try to put out stuff. Yes, you need to put it up there because people will finally go and search your company. But the way it works is when the leader puts it out, the personal pages, because you have connections, you have the connects, it gets a lot more impressions and views. And from there, it then starts passing, because what you do and what you're putting out as a leader rubs off on your company. People go and start searching your company. They'll start going back, they'll search your profile, and you can actually see the data. How many people have come and search your company profile because of what you're putting out? So you actually use the digital platforms to understand this game. And from the digital platforms, what you understand, especially on LinkedIn, you understand, it is the personal pages that get a much better traction. In fact, the data on LinkedIn itself says that, you'll get about 6 times more the traction of your company page if you as a leader post from your side. So that tells you that, it is better to work with also the algorithms of the platforms. And the algorithms of the platform says, you go out as a person, you start building that personal brand. People are going to go back to your company. They're going to look back at your company. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be posting on your company pages, not working on a company brand. But this is what happens. And you find this in also all the good startups. The leaders have been they're present, they're speaking, they're creating a lot of noise. And from there, it starts going back to the organization. People start discovering the organization from the leaders, what they come up with. And they're always trying to create this kind of a story. And all the leaders who are good, you'll find are very good storytellers. So they're always telling some story out there, and they're creating some kind of a buzz constantly out there. And then it indirectly goes and people start discovering the brand out there. So this is my learning, which I have got from working with so many clients that I've worked with in the B2B space. This is how it's working out there. Yeah. Ambi, you want to share something?
Yeah. So Suresh, I think, I keep going back to the basic thing which I said, which is you need to decide what you want to stand for. What are the 3-4 things you want to stand for? And then figure out what you want to then share on social media. So start with the basics. What do you want to stand for? For example, you are in TVS. I don't know whether you're in HR or you're in corporate communication or whether you're in engineering design. Figure out what you want to stand for. And then the simple thing to do is what Sanjay said. Share what is legitimate, which the company has told you to share or company permits you to share. Right? You may say, look, we won this racing award and it's a great bike. It has got a great engine, blah, blah, blah. And then the next post, you may write something about engineering design, which you think about, right? Which people may want to read. right? And then develop comfort. The important thing is start writing. Start writing at least once a month, something unique. I hate people who just forward stuff or just share stuff. When you're sharing something, please write 50 words, 100 words on why you're sharing it. That makes a huge, huge difference. I write articles, I wrote book reviews. So, even when I share what I've written, I always put in 100 words as an introduction to why am I sharing this? Why does it matter for me to share this? And that's how it helps, right? That's how someone says, yeah, this guy is not just sharing something someone has written. Even when I share something someone else has written, I give a little introduction. Why am I sharing this? I came across this article written by Sanjay. It talks a very important topic. I believe blah, 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 blah. And now I leave you to read the article, right? So do that little introduction and then share the stuff. I hope, Suresh, we've managed to give you some answers.
Great. Thanks, Ambi, and thanks, Sanjay. Great insights.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambi, and being for there, having spent this time with this group. So what you shared lastly, I'll just tell even my group. In WhatsApp, we see a lot of this forwards, and it's crazy. So in this group, I had to actually stop this group from, because people, after reminding them, somehow they get back into that habit of just forwarding and then flooding the group with saying. So always share your perspective, your point of view, be authentic. Even in WhatsApp groups, especially the knowledge groups that you are into, don't just put forwards, put your point of view on that. It has to come from you. So this is what, and keep on sharing and keep on writing, as Ambi is saying, which is what I learned in my journey. I was never a writer, but I started writing. It's really helped me to understand a lot of subjects, because every time I write, I have to think about something. And when I'm thinking, I'm building myself. My observation skills, my ability to put observation into words is actually building a skill inside me. It's like going to the gym. You would start small, keep on practicing, keep on doing it. And that's in slowly you'll find that you will start building your brand. Like Ambi said, first find out your where you stand. What is your point of view? First look at that. Where do you stand and what are you trying to create? And then once you're doing that, and you will learn on the way. So don't wait to be the perfect guy, the best person, putting out the best stuff out there. You will actually, when you start off, might be, as when I go back and look at some of the stuff that I shared early, I was quite clumsy. I was just learning the things, but it's over the time that, it's helped me, and I've built my style. It's my style today. So although I read a lot of stuff, I have created my own style of sharing and writing. And that's how this community got created. 500 of you on WhatsApp, and 14,000 plus following me on, on LinkedIn. All happened because I was sharing a point of view which you guys connected with. That's how this thing got built, So, and that's how I seen it gets built for every company, that a brand that I work with. So thank you, Ambi, for being here and sharing a lot of stuff. Everyone, one suggestion to all of us is, please go and read this book of Ambi. I'm not plugging it in. It's not a plug-in, but this is a fact. Like what Ambi said, he's done this, and it's a good book. It's worth reading. So you should go and read. And because we're all into this business of creating, I hope you have all enjoyed this session. Do share in your feedback in the community groups. And thank you, Ambi, again, for being with us and spending this time.
Thank you, Sanjay, for inviting me. Thank you, all of you, for being here and for those wonderful questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.